This video is about charging structures. It takes you through a live structure and also shows you how to design a new structure. Charging structures can only be managed by the practice manager and the business owner. They have the authority to design structures and to publish new ones. Advisors have access to the charging structure, but only to implement them with clients. Let's view the charging structure that exists within this business. This is fairly typical of many advice practices. It's based on percentage of monies invested, and as you can see it's tiered, but there are also additional charges to account for project fees and hourly charged work, which can't be charged as a percent. In this example, for new advice, the first £100,000 is charged between 4 and 5%, the next 100 between 3 and 4, the next 300 between 2 and 3, and so on. For ongoing service, we've taken a slightly different approach and we've fixed the charge. The first £250,000 is charged at 0.75%, the next £250,000 is charged at 0.5%, the next £250,000 is charged at 0.3%, and so on. You decide how many bands you want, you decide how wide the bands can be, and you also decide whether to fix the charges, as we have with our ongoing service, or to give the advisors discretion, as we have with the initial work. This is to account for the differences between clients and the differences in the amounts of work that often arise in practice. There is a modelling facility here on the right hand side. This defaults to 100,000, but you can place any amount in this box. It just gives you a quick indication of the revenue coming into the business and the amount being paid by the client at the centre of your charging bands. So if we take our initial charges here, as you can see on the left hand side, as we've seen a moment ago, we have discretion. Chargemanager always defaults to the centre of the bands, but you may want to have a look to see what happens if you were to go to the bottom of the bands. So band 1 at 4 and band 2 at 3, band 3 at 2%, and you can see the charge for advice has dropped. If we go to the top of the bands, then the charge for advice comes up to £5,000 and a composite charge of 5% for 100,000. And if you want to change this sum and see, for example, what this would look like for a larger amount invested, then if we go to the centre of our bands, that would be charged at just over £9,000. If we go to the bottom of the bands, so band 1 at 4, band 2 at 3, and so on, we drop to 8,000, and if we go to the top, you can see that it rises to 10,500. This shows you the degree of flexibility in the bands, but very importantly, it allows you to model the revenue coming into the business and also take account of how the clients are going to react to the amounts that you're going to charge them when they're translated into pounds and pence. In addition to percentage of monies invested, we also have additional charges, and there are some examples here for initial work, tax planning, pensions analysis, and annuity advice. These are all set in bands because obviously this type of work can vary. The same applies here on the right hand side with two typical examples for ongoing service. Additional valuations can be complex or straightforward, and additional meetings, if they're remote by email and phone, can be relatively cheap, but if they're complex and require travel and distance, then they're going to be a more expensive meeting, and so there is a range here. You can have as many additional charges as you wish, you decide on the titles, and you decide whether they're fixed or whether you set them in ranges. Let's have a look at how we would set up a new charging structure, and we'll give it a reference, and any other comments that you want to make about it you place in the box here. This follows exactly the same approach that we've been looking at, and we'll use percentages first of all, but we'll fix the charges instead of offering discretion to the advisors. So our first band obviously starts at 0 and it runs for all further investments. So if you want a straightforward structure where you charge the same percentage for all the initial work, this is how you do it in Chargemanager, and this is set at 4%. But if you want to tier your charges, then you can add a further band, and here I will make that band start at 50,000, and I will set the charge in that band at 3%. And we'll just add one further band, which we'll put in at 100,000, and we'll make the charge here 2%. you will see that what you're able to do in each of these cases is to edit the bands. So as you work through this, if you decide that you want to change the structure or you want to change parts of it, you can go to the specific band and make the amendments accordingly. So you do not have to publish a structure until you're entirely happy that it's going to work for the business and for the clients. For charges for ongoing service, you do this in exactly the same way. And we'll add just one band here, and we'll charge this at 1%, and we save it. And as with our initial work, all of the client's monies would be charged at 1% for ongoing service. Again, you can tier this and add as many bands as you wish. For additional charges, it's equally as straightforward to add these. And I'm going to take the examples that we used just now. So let's take complex pensions analysis. And in this example, let's assume that we're going to take a fixed charge on it. And we'll set that at 1500. And we can add one further one, and let's take annuity advice. And here again, let's assume it's a fixed charge of £2,000, which effectively is setting a minimum charge. And of course, if you use flexibility and give advisors discretion, your minimum will of course always be your minimum charge, which is very important in the new advisor charging environment. And exactly the same applies for ongoing service. So if we take additional valuations for argument's sake, you may want to set a fixed price at £75 for those. And obviously we enter 75 in each box and save accordingly. Again, here you can edit these and delete them until you're entirely happy that the charging structure that you're designing is the one that's going to work for the business. So, we come back to our main charging structure screen, and what you've been able to see in this video is the degree of flexibility that you have in designing charging structures.